Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Jade from the United States, who's going to share with us an LDN story for mold and sears. Thank you for joining us today, Jade.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. When did your story start?
So my illness symptoms definitely progressed and got like very noticeable in the summer of 2022. And it basically, like, for years before that, I was dealing with like a gradual fatigue that got much worse. And then I started having gut issues and severe nausea. And it was like basically my world changed. It was like day and night. I was like a very functional mom, working, functional, active in life. And everything just changed very quickly. And it was rather scary. It was like, it was gradual with the fatigue, but the other stuff was not so much. And I have an 11-year-old daughter, and everything changed. And so that was the summer of 22. At the end of May, I started having some strange neurological symptoms, just totally out of nowhere, it's felt like. And then June, I started just not feeling well, and I started having gut issues, and nausea, and just overall not feeling well, sort of like flu-like in the morning. And so I knew immediately something was wrong. And so I started going to the hospital, which I normally don't do, because I was like, well, they must be able to figure this out, which of course now I know it couldn't be further from the truth, that that's not a place that's going to be very helpful for me, with what I'm dealing with. But fast forward to July of 22, I got COVID. And so on top of SIRS and many other diagnoses, I also am dealing with long COVID, we think. My doctor's pretty confident that that's also a big piece in this. And so after I got COVID, and it was pretty brutal, I really went down pretty hard after that. Just weeks after like getting better from COVID, it was like, yeah, that was the worst of, that was the beginning of the worst of it. Summer of 22.
So you say the worst of it. What was to come?
Oh, it was so hard. The nausea alone was debilitating. It took me away from like normal functioning. I couldn't go to my normal meetings, my normal social gatherings, family events. It was so debilitating. I could just barely just be in bed, and I couldn't eat. I lost weight, 20 plus pounds, got down to like 111 pounds at the worst. And at this time I was seeing various doctors, GI specialist, of course, my GP, and I actually had to fire my first one, because immediately I was like, well, this is not a fit, because they were like talking about anxiety and depression, and like I knew in my heart like something was wrong with me. And so it was easy for me to transfer to a really wonderful GP who also was not able to help me with this stuff, but she's a piece in my journey, someone who's helping me just with different things. And I definitely went from doctor to doctor, and pretty early in my journey I found from a friend who suffered from mast cell issues, a wonderful naturopath who I just love today. I don't work with her now, but she thought I had mast cell issues, which I very well could have at the time and still might now, but that's still not 100%. And she put me on LDN right away. This was after about 9 months of suffering, though. And kind of getting off track a little bit. In that 9 months, it was pretty brutal, but I hadn't yet developed widespread pain yet. That unfortunately came after the LDN. So it's been like a mixed bag of different things going on in my journey with relief, crashing, symptoms. But that LDN after maybe 6 weeks to a couple months, something like that, maybe a few months, my nausea did improve, and I thought that that was just incredible. And I didn't quite know how that happened because we were still trying to figure out what was going on with me. You know, this stuff isn't always so simple. And my case is what they consider pretty complex, and like many others. And that alone was like just a game changer for me, just to go from being so debilitated by nausea. And so even when I did start dealing with other stuff like widespread pain, more flu-like symptoms, I had this really debilitating itch, still sometimes deal with it, but it's much less. Um, I don't really know what to call it. It's still this like mystery thing we're figuring out. Whether it's, all the things it could be. It was debilitating is the word that always comes to my mind. I get emotional when I think or talk about me at my worst and how far I've come. Um, the LDN did not help with that, but I feel like I'm on the right track with figuring everything out as a whole. So that symptom I am getting relief from. But the LDN, it initially took my nausea away, low dose naltrexone, and it's just been a tool in my journey since the doctor originally prescribed it. And now the doctor that I see, who's a Lyme literate doctor, she prescribes through this other compound pharmacy, and I take a lower dose now. I've kind of had to experiment with doses and do my own thing with that. And the LDN groups have helped tremendously with this. And I just met with my doctor that I work with now yesterday, and I told her, yep, restarting the low dose naltrexone tomorrow at 0.25 milligrams. And, I'm just going to play with that in the 0.5 because that's what's helped me the most. And I know like my body more than anyone. So she just lets me do that. And, if I'm getting relief, then we think that that's a good place to be. And so for now, that's where I'm at with the LDN. I'm going to restart it tomorrow because what happened was I just moved and I ran out of my prescription right in the middle of moving. And that never happens to me. Like I always have my stuff refills ready. Like I never thought I would run out of my LDN, but that's what happened. And I made it through the move. And so restarting tomorrow.
So what other treatments are you currently having?
So now that I'm working with the Lyme doctor that I am, I feel like I'm on the right path finally. And but I've been on the right track all along, I think. But I needed to get to where I'm at now. And it's just such a journey with doctors and experience. And um, we're treating SIRS. My main issue, she says, and I fully agree with, is mold toxicity and chronic inflammation, inflammatory response syndrome from mold toxicity. And I'm taking binders for that. I personally take cholestyramine. I take GI detox every night. I've been taking binders for about a year now. My initial mold toxicity diagnosis was last March, so over a year now. And I started thinking recently that those binders are probably helping me more than I realized over time, that this takes time. And so the LDN has been helping me as a wonderful tool during this time, to help with my symptoms, give me some relief, bring that inflammation down. And so LDN is this amazing tool helping bring all this inflammation down in my body and my brain, because it's helped some of my neuro symptoms and visual disturbances, which has been such a relief to have those come down. Binders, LDN. I just recently started a brain retraining program called Primal Trust, which I'm really excited about. Diet changes, nothing crazy, nothing extreme, I should say. More carnivore, less grain, gluten-free, low dairy. That's been helpful lately, I would say. Another big one is ivermectin. I was just talking to my doctor about that because I've had some pretty radical changes in relief as well. Since I took just a few doses more recently, a lot of my symptoms have come down and kind of stayed. So I think a lot of these things are working together, and I find it interesting because like no one's observing this stuff more than me, of course. I'm the one suffering. So I journal daily. In a way that's like not too much for me because I don't want to push it, but you know, I feel like I'm starting to kind of connect the things that might work better with the LDN. And so it's all like working together, and yeah, that's part of my treatment.
Can you actually track when you were in a moldy environment? Can you remember?
Yes, I can.
You can.
Unfortunately, I'm in mold now, and it's been a journey with that. I've had a lot of support from some different groups, as well as my doctor, kind of injunction, like together, they're helping me find a way through this. Like one of the game changers for me personally was when I learned about PCO technology, which I didn't know anything about. And I don't think that it's like a fix-all for mold. I don't, but I've met enough women and people who have found healing with technology that can bring down the mycotoxin level in the home and environment enough for healing to happen and for the needle to move. And I should have mentioned this earlier because around the time I started also feeling some real shifts and changes, is after a couple of months of having this technology. Mine's called the high tech. And some real big symptom shifts were happening, and I was taking LDN with it. And so it was a little hard to know what was what, but I really think it bringing down the load in the house. This was the place I just moved from. We moved for financial reasons and mold. There were some big changes there. And so having that experience made me feel more confident and encouraged with the technology.
Where you're living now, is the mold there or are you mold free?
No, there's mold here, and I know a lot about Hermes and Hertzmes now. I mean, a decent amount to know that there's two not great molds here, Stachy, Chaetomium, and they were in my last two houses. And finding that balance of like calming the limbic system and knowing that mold is toxic and dangerous is really hard. And I think anyone with SIRS would understand that. It's real, it's toxic, and it's not good. But I do believe from the people I've talked to and their stories, with the technology that and this is just a temporary home. So it's kind of like we'll see what happens, but I'm feeling incredibly hopeful and encouraged. I'm not in a ton of fear. But that's because of what I saw happen with me and how I felt at the last place with the technology, with all the things I was doing, which was many things. So my Hertz-knee was a 12, which is like borderline for someone with SIRS. And what I'm going to do is retest the place in 6 months. One of my mold functional coaches had recommended this. See how I feel, of course, and look at the results of the Hertz-knee. And if the spore count is significantly lower, we know the high tech is doing something. So we'll see what happens with that. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't stressful at times or triggering. It is. Everything I've been through with mold, but I do have to say I love my new place, and like it's very healing. There's like squirrels and birds and trees and chirping out every window, and it feels like we live in a tree house, literally. So that alone is good for my limbic system. So I think that will be helpful in my healing journey.
What
So there's
about
a lot of pieces.
what
Sorry.
about your daughter? Did she develop mold
That's a
toxicity?
good question. I'm still figuring that out. Short answer is yes. We did do a mycotoxin test, and she did have some black molds come up. And I was actually pretty sick, like half bedridden. This was not that long ago. When I mean, I would not have been able to do this interview 5, 6 months ago. Um, her test showed some toxic molds, and she's just not sick like me, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to treat her and have a naturopath help with binders and whatever they recommend. And so we do have her on a protocol. And yeah, that was a little hard to get that news, but she's not sick like me, so I have no doubt that Scarlett will be just fine. And she sees what we're learning a lot together about health, so that's been kind of fun and cool. And to see the silver lining in it all. She has like the Yuka app on her phone, and she's scanning things, and she loves her binders, which are natural food sources. It's kind of cool.
Well, since she's so young, I mean, is she interested in having a healthy diet, or does she want to
She
eat
still
like,
asks for McDonald's. That's a
okay,
reality. She's a kid who wants to be a kid, and not that every kid wants McDonald's, but she does. And I'm okay with that from time to time, letting her be a kid. And there was a time where I was so sick, I could just do the bare minimum. And thank God I have a very supportive partner and support system of friends and people in the chronic illness community. But yeah, she's she's learning with me, and I would say she's a healthy girl, and we have the right support now, and I want to keep her on the right track, you know.
well, that's amazing. We could end it there. And how about in a year's time, you come back and give us an update on how you are?
I would love to. Yeah. Thank you
See,
for having
see you,
me.
see you singing and dancing and jumping around and
Oh
having
my gosh. I hope so. I hope so.
fun. Well, we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care. I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders. And I keep on seeing them, especially in hard to diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about mast cell activation syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little, www.mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.